Thank you, Nadeen, for joining me today. I know you're a busy bee with all the work stuff you're doing.
Yeah, crazy. Important, very important work stuff.
Yeah. So what have you been up to?
It's a good question. All kinds of stuff. I'm very day by day, moment by moment at this point. I've just pulled in different directions, but all good. All good stuff.
I want to start off with your company, why?
Okay.
I think the first question would be why? Why? You know?
Like the name.
Yeah, where did that come from? What was that whole idea and concept for you?
So I had my business name before I even had my business. It was like a registered business name. I had it. I knew I always wanted my own business, so it was definitely something like I knew I would use at some point in my life. Didn't know when. And basically, what happened, I remember being at my parents' and I was writing something down at the kitchen table with my mom, and I was writing out the word why. And I forgot the H, and I didn't immediately remember or notice it. And I read it, and I said, I said, it still kind of sounds the same. It's still like there's
Why?
exactly WY is still Y.
Yeah.
And I said that would be a perfect name for what I was getting into, because I also pictured the business having different divisions to it, being more of a group of companies, having different partnerships with different companies where we would be more the strategy arm and they would be more the operations arm. So it kind of came together that way. And I loved the idea of having an acronym in the name itself. And it's really funny as time's gone on when people see the business name. Some people say Y, some people say WY. And it's always interesting to see the professions and the background people are in and which way they go with it. So that's the story of how that became a thing. And it became part of our tagline with the H missing. We put the how to in your why. So
Look at you guys, so smart.
Here we are.
So, your field that you're in is creative consulting. Is that the best way to put it?
We consult on different areas. If we were to look at all of our clients, because at this point we're very diverse in the industries we service and what people come to us for. If we were to look at the commonality in all of our clients, we're consulting on strategy, we're consulting on business development, we're consulting on how to grow your business. So we have consultants with different specializations and certain niches where we can bring people in to consult on very specific niche markets. But communications as a whole really is going to vary depending on the business you're in and what your goals are for your company. So the outputs are always very different. And depending on your vision for your business, we can either execute or consult for internal teams to execute properly.
Was this something you always wanted to do growing up, or is this kind of something that just came to you left field, kind of?
No, my degree is in public relations, so the communications was always there. Prior to having my business, I was with a food service franchise chain, so that I became very specialized in food service and hospitality. It's still majority of our businesses are in that sector. So it became, I knew I wanted to start there, and I also knew I wanted to diversify. And with anything, it's about evolving with the times. So I think mixed with my past experience, as well as what I'm really passionate about, which is being helpful and being a resource and just being able to see results, became this natural fit for supporting growth brands. Growth brands.
Go band.
Wherever they need the support to fulfill the goals.
You said it's part of more so hospitality in the sense of with your consulting. Do you find it difficult working with clients sometimes because you can see both sides of your field, what you're doing and what they need to do sometimes?
Well, listen, my background, even prior to getting on the business side of hospitality, I was in different roles in the hospitality industry. And with that industry, you're very used to being the positive light in someone's day.
You have to.
For example,
You have to be
leaving
there.
your problems aside and really focusing on customer care and attention. So I think all of those learnings and what came natural for me in the hospitality industry is really set the foundation for why. And still, like, all of us working with the company have the same attitude of just wanting to be helpful and just doing as much as we can for our clients and our customers. That's stayed the core of our values. And, the reality is, in our business, we're being hired to support. So we're being hired to support different operations, and different founders will have their own way of doing things. And, if your business got to a certain point, you're obviously doing something right as the owner and operator. So it's not our role to come in and say, you need to be doing this, doing that, or you're going to fail. There's a merge that really happens when we work with our clients, which is just a little foreign, I think, to some other agencies who, like, I get it when you have a process and you've seen results in certain areas, you are obviously advising your client what's going to be successful, but there's many different ways to do something. And we do try to find that balance where our clients are comfortable while advising our recommendations, and finding almost a sweet spot between what the founder and operator wants to see and what we feel is best as subject matter experts.
Was it always a consulting group, or was there a different avenue that you first started with it?
There was always the name and the vision, because it was always the vision. That's what we launched with as a business. And when we were pitching on different clients and working with different clients, they were coming to us for support, which was always something we would do, is the services to actually execute. Where we really found our niche was being, I guess, that translational process between companies and their target market. So we got into restaurant technology work pretty soon after starting the business. And, like, that's a perfect example of having restaurants, food service, hospitality on one end of the spectrum and technology on another end of the spectrum. They're two different languages. So how do you translate the technology message in a way that is understood by the receiver, which is your customer in the food service and hospitality industry? That really helped, I guess, pave the way for everything that we do, because consulting is just kind of embedded in everything we do. So even if we're planning social media calendars, as an example, for a client, and they've hired us for that service, consulting's embedded in that. And that's also our way to make change and stay on the same page with the customer and to really evolve as...
Sorry, sorry to cut you off, when you say calendar, you mean just like planning for their weeks and month? Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah, as one example.
I kind of relate to you in the sense of working with people, and like how that could be fun at times and sometimes a little bit, challenging. But for you, what are some pros and cons to working with people?
Honestly, I really do thrive with working with people. It's very motivating for me to talk through something and then put a plan in place and to work towards a goal. So that sense, I think I've found my perfect, I guess, synergy with my life of something that I actually really...
You're a people person.
Yeah, but with that, I think if you look at the flip of that, you're always putting everyone else first before your own self. And when you feel like you're being relied on for so many different things by so many different people, there's a lot of pressure that can come with that. But, with anything in life, you roll with the punches and the tides, and you just keep moving forward, and you do the best you can every day to just have the best day.
Yeah. I think entrepreneurship is a interesting field to be in, because again, it is a lot of people go to work and then they clock out and they get to go home and take a break. I think with you and with a lot of people, you go home and there's a trillion things on your plate and you have your own schedule. So that's another level of stress, because I feel like with me personally, like when I'm working with people, I have my own schedule and I have my own things that I'm thankful that I'm able to schedule. But it's like, if I don't attend to it, if I don't work at it all the time, then I can get really consumed in it. So where have you found the balance between, work and life, separating it?
I wouldn't say there's a work-life balance. It's a work-life integration. And, I think there's a lot of pressure put on people to have this balance. But for me, I think it was always really important that it all does come together. And it has come together with my lifestyle and family, friends, and, even the people you start to socialize with are wired very similarly. So it also just becomes kind of understood by everyone what your responsibilities and priorities are in life. And, naturally you grow out of people or out of relationships that really don't have those same values as it. So entrepreneurship really is a soul journey. You have so much freedom to express yourself the way you want to and create a life that you really want. And it's so nice to not feel the cage that some people might feel or don't feel, right? Some people thrive in
I was gonna say, some people love the cage. Like, I'm not that kind of
and change is hard, right? Like it's not in us as humans to just like fly away, right? You want to be in familiarity and something that is comfortable. But for me, I think I always saw a bigger picture, and I've been very lucky that I've kind of trusted myself to put myself out in certain situations to be able to do that for myself. And it does allow other freedoms that would, I think as you move forward in life, things like being there for family, as an example, like that can be strenuous when you're stuck in such a regime, where I do find flexibility to prioritize certain things that need attention like that.
It was interesting what you said about entrepreneurship being a soul journey, because when I found myself like just getting creative and wanting to start things, anytime when I started, like I had never had an issue of starting it. It was always starting it, and then like, I don't want to say life comes around, but like I've always found myself being in a reflective state of where I'm at on my journey and stuff. And it's like, it's another level of stress in a way, because you're trying to figure out how to run yourself and how to run a business, but you're also like learning how to unlearn things and how to be a different person. And it kind of takes away from like understanding who you are, because at the end of the day, we're all growing and we're trying to figure out who we are. So like doing that, I feel like sometimes it's hard, because you're like, you start something, you feel so confident, and then once you start getting the ball rolling, you're just like, where am I going? What's happening? What's going on? How's the flow been with you with that?
It's always a roller coaster. I think as you navigate certain challenges, you start to just realize like this is just going to keep happening, and it's your mindset that really keeps you locked on the journey. And it's not always a straight journey, to your point with your experience, right? You've had these moments where you're unlearning things, and I'm sure with that process you disengage from whatever you're trying to build, and then that's really what you want to do, so you dive back into it. If I look back, so I actually started my business when I was on a sabbatical from my job, and I had moved to Australia. I have my citizenship, so it was something I always wanted to do. I didn't know I would start a business in Matmas. I had told you earlier that I knew that's something I wanted to do at some point in my life. So it was kind of one of those things where, I jumped already, and, keep jumping, right? Keep taking the risk. So
Did you make why, like when you like created it, like just the concept, was that created when you were in Australia or before you left or after?
Like the name was registered for probably a year and a half before I actually did anything with it. And then when I had left and moved to Australia, I had gotten a job there right away, and I had gone to a pretty large conference in Dubai. My last day on the job, I got a ticket to this massive conference. So I feel like all the stars aligned for me to focus on that, where I was building my business by day and working by night at a VIP casino resort out there. It became something where, you know what, I'm going to test this on people I don't know and on the other side of the world. And, you know, if I fail, then no one knows me here. It won't stay with me. You know what I mean? And I got clients out there. And I came back and I was working with clients that I had met at the conference, and it just kind of snowballed. So there was a lot of moments where I just wanted to get on a plane and go back home. And I remember that conference that I mentioned to you. I remember looking in the mirror when I got there saying, like, you're so out of your mind. In what world did you think that you could do this? And you put your big girl pants on and you take a deep breath and you just like go, right?
Yeah.
So there was a lot of those moments. There's still a lot of those moments. I felt like I got to a good place with everything, and then COVID happened. And, you know, I was very specialized to food service hospitality. It was
And they got a
something
big
I knew
hit.
very well from an operations and a marketing standpoint. So it was something I knew I could confidently advise and be a resource for people and businesses in that industry. But I knew I wanted to diversify. I knew what else can be offered. I just obviously, you know, your first client, your first 2 clients, like that's always the hard part, right? Why trust you when people have use cases that they were able to have proven results here, right?
Yeah.
So I feel like I finally found my groove, and then COVID happened and it demolished the industry, and I lost all my contracts, and I had to start from the ground up again. So it was like, you know, 2 years gone now, or a year and a half, whatever it was. And, you know, now let's do this all over again, and let's specialize in this again, you know, and it would just be, you know, we ended up picking up really well with the digital side that we knew had legs on it. We just needed people to trust us with it. But that's, you know, that was very stressful for me. And just even with that industry being open, being closed, okay, it's just a few weeks, then a few months, then it's years. It became very stressful, not just for me, but with my role, I was also taking on a lot of that stress from clients, right? Who were very stressed, right?
Yeah.
Their businesses, their livelihoods, their families, their employees' families, everything was on their minds, right? So, because it was such a roller coaster, and we also got to a point where we didn't know how long it was going to last, it did become this overdrive for such a long time. So even this kind of links back to your previous question, where's that balance? And, you know, when you lose all your contracts and all the income that
the balance is thrown right off.
Like, I've never been in a situation in my life where I wasn't able to make an income for myself. That was a personal thing that I needed to overcome.
Yeah.
And, you know, you have bills to pay and all these other factors, right? It puts a fire under you. You have responsibilities, right? So there was no sleeping. It was day and night, just focus on the mission. And that was great. It kept me very motivated. It built the foundation of what the company is today. But like, you know, let's say a year and a half even into that whole cycle of like opening, closure, busy time for us, slow time for us, right? It became hard to separate from what, like, when's this going to end? And we need to be working on overdrive during these high times because we don't know what these low times are going to bring. And that's when it was also, you know, your work. I started joking with people that I just sleep at my office now, which I had a home office at the time. So it just, you know, you're rolling out of bed to your office, and I wasn't leaving my office until it was time to go back to bed. And, you know, I don't think that's healthy. I have found, again, the motivation that I get from people of being in person with them and brainstorming and collaborating is very important for me. Being hands-on and part of the experience, not just through a screen all the time, is also very important for me. So, you know, when things opened up and became a little bit more normal, so I guess more of a routine was established. We know what we don't like and what we don't want.
Yeah.
And how can we build to just make sense.
Jumping back to Australia, what was the whole thought and idea of just like going there in the first place? Was it because you wanted to get away from a job, or like what was the situation there?
No, I have my citizenship, so it's something I always wanted to use in my life.
What did you get your citizenship for?
My mom's Australian.
Oh,
so,
cool.
So always had it, always wanted to move out there and experience life out there. But it was always one thing after another. School, the guy you're dating, your job, your apartment, right? One thing after another, you don't do it. And I just, at that time of my life where I made the decision to go, there was just nothing in my way stopping me. Like, I think I was in a point in my life where everything was just stagnant. Like, my job wasn't new anymore. My apartment wasn't new anymore.
You
Single.
needed the change. Yeah.
It just, right? And I remember even at the time saying like, okay, next year I'll do it. And then you woke up a few days later saying, no, if I wait next year, it's going to be something else. Like, again, it comes back to that cage that we're all comfortable with, right? Like, it takes a lot to get yourself out of a routine and out of a life that you know, right? So now, again, you're challenging yourself of what you know your potential can accomplish. To get out there and actually have the confidence and, everything you need to make a move like that. So, yeah, that's kind of what got it going.
How was the lifestyle in Australia versus here?
I was living on the Gold Coast, so it was more of a beach town, 28 and sunny every day.
Gorgeous.
You know what? Yeah. And I'm such a summer girl normally, but I've really appreciated the seasons after that. Even the cold, like, I think it's too cold here for too long, but I've not minded it. It's kind of, when it's the same all the time, you almost do kind of
drive yourself crazy.
Like, I can't explain it because it's beautiful. Obviously, it's too the same every day. I don't know how to explain it, but I thought Australia was great. It's a great place where you can work a normal life and make a good living for yourself and still set goals to buy a house and not...
Is that what you wanted to do? You wanted to live there?
It was an option. It always kind of was an option. I did see myself going back and forth at least. And then, life happens. There was I got into a really bad accident here, like 5.5 years now, just a few months after coming back. So that put a wrench into plans, but, a blessing or a curse, you'll never know, right? So when that wasn't an option, I didn't go. COVID happened to be that following year. So I'm really grateful that I wasn't stuck somewhere.
So your accident was in 2019?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
And that was the year I got back, like a few months before that. So the plan was just come, be here for the summer, work a contract that I had, and go back. And that was the first thing that happened. And then, again, life happens, right? My business became my focus, started seeing someone, like, all the things that kind of come with life. And, if I were to move away, I think it would be somewhere closer. It's the other side of the world, so it's a huge commitment. It's even to stay in touch through calls and texts is really hard. It's such a big time difference where it's tough to manage, and everyone sees the beauty in moving away, but there's so much that challenges you. It's you're taken out of your roots, and even though I had family there, and even though I made great friends there, it just always felt like there was this, you're like still very isolated, and it's a really hard thing to communicate. That I've only really been able to connect with people who've also moved away for whatever reason from home to really understand, because everything's great, but then it's like not home, which I was never wired to be like that. I was wired to be like, your home is where you hang your hat, and
that's it. You said you're like a people person, so I could assume like you making all these changes, moving away, coming back, like How did you manage your relationships? I would say more so at home, just because like you grew up with everybody in a
It
sense,
was
you know.
tough. It was tough. Like, I have a set of grandparents here that I was raised by, and then I had a set of grandparents there that I felt really lucky to get to know, like, even more. And I have my whole mom's side of the family and some of my dad's side of the family there. So it was really nice to bond and still have that familiarity that I have for my family here. But it's exactly that. Like, you miss certain traditions, you miss certain relationships, and the dynamics that like definitely change in that process. And it was tough. I mean, I ended up coming back home because I was kind of getting bored of the area I was in and wanted to move to more of a city, like a Sydney, Melbourne type of thing. And I just said, if I'm gonna just pick myself up again and move and start over again, because that's what it would have been, I would have been needing to make even more new friends now and find another place to live and just starting from scratch again. I said, I'm gonna come home first and like get that family time, the friend time, and right. But someone said something to me and it's always stuck. When you leave home, everything's the same, but your eyes are different. So you just see
Which makes it different.
it makes it different. It's never the same again.
How was that for you, realizing that and moving forward in, life?
I mean, change is hard regardless of if it's a good change or a tough change. I think that time of my life, there was a lot that changed. So it was tough to manage through, and certain stresses that I don't know that would be a stress at this point in my life definitely were almost end of the world stresses back then.
Yeah.
And
At least in our brains, they're end of the world.
yeah, but again, that's where your growth and your evolution personally like really starts like to play out, and I don't regret it at all. It's the best thing I ever did for myself, and I'm really happy I did that for all kinds of reasons. Like I said, it changed me as a person for the better, I think. And at the end of the day, I don't live with this what if. It was something that from the time I was in high school, I wanted to go and move out there, and my priorities weren't. That wasn't a priority at that point in my life, but it's something I wanted to do. And the easy route, I think, is blaming all these just different people or different times of your life on why you didn't do it. But it's kind of clear conscience. It's like, no, I did it, and it was something I wanted to do, and it's not something I'll ever wonder about what the outcome would be if I didn't do it.
When you get in the groove of making a change and then not knowing where it goes, how do you calm yourself down or just like ease yourself when you know that it's either going to be something more permanent or something that's just temporary?
If I think back to that time, there was just a lot of, I'm pretty optimistic and I'm pretty positive, and I'd rather see the glass half full than half empty. At that time of my life, I think there was a lot of negative that I'm used to dealing with problems and moving forward from it. But there was like the accident was like, and the injuries and everything I had to deal with that was so out of my control. And also, I think you can live with your decisions more if it's something that came from you wanting to do it. You can, if I had moved and it changed my life for the worse, I would live with the decision that was a decision I made. That's something I wanted to do. I saw it through. I learned a lesson, move on. With something like the accident, it wasn't in my control. It's not something I wanted to deal with. I was always the type of person where it's like, pick up, move on, nothing's wrong, everything's good. Like that was always my exterior and how I saw life. And I think that's what always kept me moving forward. But I really wasn't able to do that. You have injuries that you're dealing with that are out of your control. The outlets that I used to deal with stress, like going to the gym or socializing, weren't options for me anymore.
If you don't mind me asking, what was the accident?
It was on the highway there was a truck that hit me from behind, and then it spun me from the right to the left lane, and then T-boned by another commercial vehicle. It was very scary.
Traumatizing for sure.
Yeah. For sure. For a long time.
Just a little bit.
Yeah. Never mind the injuries, but then exactly that, like, it's now your mentality and anxiety that comes from that, and like, you know, but.
What was your biggest takeaway from that? You're a Gemini as well, right? So we just think things all up in the air. So like I'll get hurt and then I'll think of like, okay, why is life giving me this? Why am I, what's the learning lesson here?
It's been 5.5 years now, so it's really hard to summarize, I think, the process of it all. I think if I were to summarize anything at this point is life happens. It happens for a reason that's bigger than what we know. And at the end of the day, it made me stronger, and I guess made me, you have to help yourself. You know what I mean? And it's not someone else's responsibility to do that. And I think it has, I don't want to say selfish, because I think selfish can be a good thing. And, you know, going back to how I naturally am as a person, I'll put everyone else before me. And I also, when you're just used to being like, okay, everything's fine, everything's great, you're moving forward, you're actually not in tune with, no, SOS, like, I need help, I need to prioritize this, I need, like, it's allowed me, I think, to connect to myself, because, you know, I'm doing treatments even now, right, that has helped me have a better quality of life.
Have you found a way to recognize when something is, okay, I need to adapt and roll with it, or this is something that I shouldn't actually go through or endure?
I think I've just always been in situations where I've needed to adapt. Like, I was always very comfortable with meeting new people and having like friends and making friends wherever I was. I think the adapting became very normal, of like putting myself in uncomfortable situations. That wasn't foreign to me, but it was when I started putting myself in even more uncomfortable situations and getting into more foreign territory, or, you know, unlearning certain things that I've held on to or were brought up with. That became, I think, more like, it's just like a bigger stepping stone almost. It's like, okay, you trained for a 3K marathon, now let's train for a 10K marathon. Like, then it's like, right? So I think when you have that mindset that you want to growth, like that growth mindset type of mentality, that's very normal for you, of putting yourself in those uncomfortable situations.
I think just going back to relationships and stuff, where do you find the time to just be like, you know what, I'm not going to do this today, I'm going to just do something else, versus like, oh, I have to do this, I need to go to this event, I gotta go to blah blah blah, you know, like, because I know a lot of people go through things and they just, it's funny because like I watch videos all over on like Instagram, and there'll be like TikTok videos of like girls talk, be like, you know, I need my friends that are very low maintenance. They, you know, if I don't want to go somewhere, I don't go there. If I don't do this, I don't do that. And like, where do you find the balance between having that comfort of like, oh no, I don't do that, but also like, no, I should do this today. Why don't I just go? It's fine. It's not that serious.
I schedule everything. Like, my calendar is like booked, and that's my way of committing to something. It's with work and it's with personal, and I, for sure, like, you need to be wired to be very driven and self-motivated to stick to that, because why do you just ignore the calendar invite, right? So I think that's just a routine I've built with myself, and that's just, I can work my schedule around certain priorities in my life. And when it comes to relationships, I think it's just really important to know your boundaries with people. And sometimes it is like, I think as I've gotten older, as time has gone on, I don't know if it's an age thing, you know, you do have to prioritize what you want in your life, and not everyone's gonna be a perfect friend or a perfect partner, or what's a value that is not negotiable for you, and how involved do you let that person get, given how you're aligned. I think that's just really important to look at. And I think when you are a good person, like, people do see that, and I'm very lucky. I have a lot of friends that I've had in my life for a really long time, and I think that speaks volumes as well. But at the same time, like, the relationship's different. We all have our own lives, and like, some have kids, some live far. There's all kinds of reasons why we have different lives, but how do you still stay in touch, and how valuable and how much of a priority is that? And I think you need to make time for things that are important for you, even if it's not a perfect setting.
Have you ever found yourself being so adaptable to the point where you feel like you're not being truly yourself within work or just people in general? Like, have you ever had a moment where you like went out and you were just Nadeen, but like there was a different side of you that came out and you went, oh, that's not really me.
That's not like me. As you go through life, you learn more and more about yourself, and I do think I really understand myself well enough to know where that reaction came from, where that trigger came from. I'm really aligned with like who I am as a person, what I want out of my life, and what I need to do to like keep my mindset strong. And without looking too much in the future, you also have to be very present and enjoy what you have. You don't, you might not have tomorrow. It's something that you have to remind yourself of, for sure. And when I look at situations or experiences in my life where it wasn't me, it really did come down to me not respecting like my own boundary with myself. And I am someone who gives more than I take, and when you do that, if you're not around people with good intentions or have like maybe even different values, it doesn't even need to be like they're a horrible, malicious person. That's where, at the end of the day, if I'm taken advantage of, I've allowed them to take advantage of me because I didn't respect my own boundary with things, and give myself what I needed at the end of the day, and gave more than I needed to give myself, right?
It's funny that you brought up like filling their cup more than your own. I found myself doing that as well, but I found that it's still my personality. So when I was trying to change that, I was doing that less and less, and I found like I was still losing myself in a way. So when I look back at it a few months or a year later, I kind of just said, you know what, I'm gonna still fill the cup up I want to, but I'm gonna really pay attention to my own cup and fill it up as I go. I think with finding boundaries and trying to figure out what works and what doesn't, it's kind of like I've found myself at least seeing what works and what doesn't from an outside perspective of like an individual or someone I'm working with, versus like, yeah, that's the boundary, but like what's my boundary with me too? Like what's something I'm doing that's actually taken away from like who I am as a person, Has there been any challenges with that, trying to make changes for yourself? Also be like, you know what, no, I actually like doing that, let me stick with that, maybe find a different approach to it. Or
I mean, it's never that simple to like get there, right? You go through a lot of highs and a lot of lows to kind of get to that realization of like what you need. If you're used to being a person, like, again, and I've mentioned this, it's very, my life and my work is very intertwined with each other. So yeah, you're a people pleaser and someone who gives, and you're always looking for the vision of a future, right? You're thinking of the best decision you can make in that moment to get you there, right? So how do you then ground yourself to be present still and still do what you need to do for yourself to be in the best state of mind? And part of that is grounding and really centering yourself of how big of a problem would this be if I were to look, find my crystal ball and could see my future. Is this something that I'm going to be wrapped up in, in the future? Is this something that I won't even remember? But again, I went everywhere and back. That, like I mentioned, that accident was a pivotal point for me of like that lowest low that I couldn't even like shake myself out of. And then when you're dealing with things like that, and you're dealing with, stress from that and everything that comes with that, and managing this new life of yours mixed with, and again, when you're doing something like that and you don't even want to be doing it, you're not the same. You're stressed, you're upset all the time, and then you're not even yourself to the people around you that know you, right? So looking back at it all, again, you learn a lot with how to deal with everything, and you're always learning. I think that's something we have to remind ourselves all the time.
What are some ways you ground yourself or take that time to be like, okay, I need a
I need
second?
to isolate myself. I need my me time. Especially like if it's just work, family, personal, I just need to just have a dark room and just do nothing and just recharge my social battery. It's really important. I think stepping outside and just fresh air, it's maybe a little cliche, but it does give that separation I need, because sometimes, again, picture you're in your office all the time, 24/7, that's a cage, right? So how do you escape that? So that for me, I definitely like find some form of peace in like
Chaos.
friends, family that have been there for what?
I said peace and chaos because I do sometimes.
Yes. You know what? I don't know. I don't like the chaos, but I
You
can
do though too at the same time, just a different version of it. Not chaos in a bad way. It's like, oh, this is happening, but like you still have a lot on your plate. There could be different versions of chaos, you know.
I get what you're saying. Like I do like that. There's always. I'm never bored. Gone are the days where the to-do list is crossed off on the day. Like, no, that's ever. There's always a to-do list. So that was early on in my career really hard to manage. Like, I can't go anywhere until this is done. It's never gonna be done now, right?
Yeah. No, I get it.
Right. There's a lot that comes with chaos, and that I think happens to us chemically and emotionally, of just that dopamine rush and that crash and needing like more, right? I think, even in work and business, you can keep going and you can keep building. What's your line? Like what are you trying to accomplish? Otherwise, if you're just constantly go, and you'll never be satisfied, you'll never be happy. So I do think, even for me, celebrating like smaller wins and just really appreciating what I have and what I built and like everything, how it's like grown, I think is also really important. You hear it all the time. People work their whole lives to finally be retired and enjoy their life, and then
I hate that.
fitness takes over or something like, it's like you're not enjoying anymore. So I do think it's really important to do both at the same time.
When you're creating a line to be like, okay, this is where I need to be, do you find yourself getting caught up in like the different ideas or thoughts that could come about with where you're headed at? Does it get overwhelming for you?
And it has like completely taken that overwhelming stress has definitely taken over at times, where it's totally taken control of me.
I think it goes back to like us talking about the cage, because sometimes when we're not grounded and we're going through a lot, the cage is like needed to be like, chill, relax, calm down,
Totally. Absolutely.
So like I found myself like, I have the freedom to do whatever I want, but like it's so out there that my brain just goes left, right, up and down, because I'm just like, there's no containment of like where I'm putting my energy towards. And it's like, it's fulfilling, but it's like, why is it when I'm doing stuff in a cage, I feel one way, I'm feeling very tied down, but like there's comfort, but then I do that, it's just like I haven't truly felt the balance yet with like entrepreneurship, I would say, because it's very up and down. It's kind of just like, I guess, taking the time to like not have so many highs that are really high and so many lows are really low, just like having that wave more consistently versus
but
stagnant.
I feel like part of that's just accepting what is, right? Like, and that's where I think we put a lot of pressure on ourselves, is like analyzing like where we're at, and that pressure we put on ourselves to get us somewhere. Well, yes, of course it's important to know where you're going and to make good decisions to get you there, but sometimes these things come completely out of our control, and then how are we going to deal with that? So I do find just having no expectations is, you want to have expectations to like set a standard.
Yeah.
But sometimes you can't show up. Sometimes you're only showing up 1%. And it's not about the hour to hour, the day by day. It's the journey. So you might have had a shit week, right? But how does that look in your month? How does that look in your year? And at the end of the day, if you're showing up for yourself more than you're not, or showing up to your priorities more than you're not, you're still winning, right? So I think it's about, when you're tracking your progress, not being so like micromanaging yourself and so oh, why did I take so long to do that? Why am I procrastinating? Why didn't I do, like, just that's what you needed to do in the moment. And you're wasting your energy just cycling that negativity to yourself.
Yeah.
Then you're taking away from what you're trying to build. So again, it's easier said than done. And it's taken a lot to even get me there. But I really understand it as that now. And part of it is just accepting yourself and where you're at and what you did that day.
Do you find yourself looking at things and trying to analyze it, and then you're like, why am I looking at this so deep? Like, why is this so deep right now?
Yeah, for sure.
Like, you could think about one work thing and you get blown off a tangent that you did like 10 years ago.
This is where evolution of it all comes in, right? So I've had my business now for 6 years, over 6 years. September was 6 years. And when your personal and your work become so intertwined, there's no separation really. So your personal problems become your work problems, and your work problems become your personal problems. It's not like I'm gonna close my laptop and go have a good dinner. Like, if you didn't get something where you needed it to be that day, it'll eat at you. And it took a lot to get me there, because definitely there were times where I was hard on myself with how a meeting went, or any reaction from a friend or family, or I don't know, just anything that can cause you to ruminate like that. Going through what I needed to go through to move forward from the anxiety I went through with my accident and everything, it opened my eyes to the fact that your mind, it's your best friend or your worst enemy.
Nightmare.
You can trap yourself for sure by telling yourself things that you shouldn't be telling yourself, right? So I guess it's a little hard to summarize, and I definitely know what you're talking about. And if we had this conversation even a year or two ago, I'd have a lot more to maybe say. I really do see a change with even myself, where it's like really hard
Just finding time to turn it off and be like, okay, not right now. It's not that serious.
I just don't relate to it anymore. Like the overthinking aspect, I think it's important to think through things and make the best decision with anything.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know that I spend my time replaying it. You're making that decision to put your energy into that.
Yeah.
And even going out on my own with my business at the beginning, like I had such this perfectionist mentality. Like, if it's not perfect, it can't go out there. What are people going to say? And at this point, I feel like I just do what makes sense for me and what is a natural expression for me. And I think it's up to the receiver as well to also like understand that. And I think at the end of the day, if you have a good intent and you actually are conscious about what your actions and your words and, you know, where your priorities are, and it's communicated, like,
I think, sorry to cut you off, you talked about like putting your energy into it. I think sometimes, yes, it's like you're putting your energy into it, but like, why is my energy going towards it in the first place? Like, why am I think finding the root
that's coming up for you, where it's like, is your energy going into negative talk, self-talk as an example? Is that what you're getting at? Or is your energy, like, when you're speaking to this, what's your example?
You're walking into maybe, like, let's say a social situation and someone feels off, let's just say, and it's kind of like you're aware of what's happening. Yes, you're thinking about it, but also just like, why is it there at the back of my mind still? Like, why am I having a dinner and I'm still thinking about this individual next to me? Is it like what's attracting me towards the situation? You know what I mean? Just thinking about that and being like, yeah, then you go into, okay, is this serious? Is this not? But even then, like, I'm sitting at the table and I'm just like, I'm just trying to have some dinner and wine, and here I am.
There's, for sure, like, I found meditation and mindfulness and all of that have really helped with that. But I do think there's something to be said where if something's staying on your mind, that means you're not done with it. Either if something's unresolved, let's say if it's a situation between someone and it's not resolved, it for sure makes sense that you're thinking about it. If you have all the pieces, but they're not matching up with each other, of course you're overthinking it. Your brain is trying to process it and find out what happened here. Yeah. Right? So I think that's also very natural. But I think where we need to be better at identifying is this a situation where if it's resolved, is it gonna help me for my next step? So again, that could be personal or work. Like when it comes to a work setting, the more we think through a campaign, an activation, a new division of the company, as much as we can ruminate, quote unquote, to avoid mistakes, that's actually a good thing. But when you're sitting there in situations where he said this, she said that, this doesn't make sense. Like, what are you trying to get at by understanding it more? There's so many reasons that you could want to make it make sense. And at what point is it just not healthy anymore? I think that's also really important to identify. But the reality is, if it's sticking in your mind, something's trying to tell you something. It's either this is worth fixing through and talking through so we can move forward, or this person, place, or thing is not meant to be in my life, just let it go. Or it could be a trigger from something that's happened in your life previously.
Have you ever been in a situation where you feel something so off on a 3D in front of you, but like internally you're kind of just like wondering, why is it so different visually versus like with my heart?
Your head and your heart, you have to picture that they're two different people almost.
Yeah.
And they could be talking to each other and understanding each other. And I think the goal with anything is for that to come in this perfect middle of they're both at peace. If one of them is overruling the other one, it's definitely a sign that it needs attention in your life. But to what degree, to what extent, and for how long is really important for you to understand with yourself and what you're trying to do. And I think everyone's going to have their own limit with anything. And I think if I was ever displaced and really wasn't seeing reality for what it was because I didn't want that to be the truth. I was getting in the way of that communication between the two of them. You know?
Yeah, no, I get that for sure. It's been interesting meeting someone and then having that thought of being aware that there's something in the way of them, and you're like, damn, okay, I know it's not me, but it's getting in the way of like me getting to know them. I'm honestly just asking for myself, not even for you.
Trying to, like, again, I think it comes down to boundaries, right? Like, and what you want and what you're trying to do, right? So I think, you know, marriage, kids, that's a normal thing that people want, right? So if you're dating with that objective, but then what's the balance, right? Like, you know, sometimes you can be so laser focused with that where you're not even yourself. You're just like, I want this, I want that, I want that. It's like, let's get to know each other. Let's like see if we actually
scheduling it in, writing down what you need, what you don't.
Let's figure out if we actually, right? But then I've been in situations too where it's like, you know, you become so delusionally determined on like your outcome with them and working on it, and then it takes away from your soul. So then that's where it's like managing expectations and what like you can get out of someone at the end of the day, and knowing that you have to give yourself the love first. And if you love yourself, would you be accepting this from anyone? But at the same time, like, I feel like when you're dating and you're getting to know someone, that's just genuinely your time to be building a friendship and a foundation that you can build off of. So it's hard for me to, I guess, articulate things because I don't think I see this normal path of a relationship for me. And I don't know if like a long-term thing is my, like maybe it is, it just hasn't happened yet, you know? So it's like, am I wired different, or is it just not the right time or the right people? Like, that's where it's like, I think it
goes to like, I think it goes back to like, I know it's like a lot of people talk about, a lot of people are very on the fence, or not on the fence, just like left, right, you know, it's this way or this way. It goes back to like the social aspect of it. Like, yes, marriage is very, you know, it's a thing and people want to get it. It's kind of like, in a way, it's given to us like, no, you should get married, you should do this and that. And there's so much greatness to it, but it's like, just even realizing that like, not everybody can do that. Like, literally they can't do that. And it's like taking that and just like letting it go and going with it, because like you reflect on yourself being like, okay, well, like, yeah, I want to get married, I would love that, but also like, did I just create that possibility for myself? Am I creating this world that I don't actually truly know if I want, or I don't know if you've been in that space or thought
I
about it.
don't think like marriage and kids have ever been like my destination. I think it's beautiful, and if it's meant to be for me, it will be. So I think that also makes it kind of like a unique question for me, because I don't know. For me, the goal would be to have a partner I grow with and understands me and appreciates me, and
Well,
all
I
the
think
things
that's what
that
it is at the end of the day. So
it's
like
not
even what you
always
just
so for
said,
people,
yeah.
right? Like sometimes people are so focused on that's what I have to do, so that's what I'm gonna do, and they do all the right things to get them there, and then they wake up and it's like not the life that they imagined. And
I like look at different, Instagram and everything. You see a lot of different versions of relationships, and you kind of see like people who are very like on the gram, very like, oh, this is my relationship. They talk about it and stuff. It's kind of just like what you just said. Like, are they? Is that like to a core of who they are and where they need to be with their life? Is that truly what they're supposed to be doing? And then like again, what you said about them waking up and then realizing their life is kind of just like you don't know with anybody, which is hard because
yeah,
then you're
again,
trying to figure it out for yourself.
I think with anything, relationships are tough, and everyone has their reasons for being with the partner they're with, and it's not for us to judge other people's. Like, you could say that couple's toxic, and like it works for them, right?
So
Like,
weird that it
but
works.
I mean, there's so many reasons why people like that dynamic, right? And I think
Yeah.
a lot of it comes with that rush, that dopamine rush. And I'm not a therapist. I'm sure there's tons of research on why people like that cycle. I just think I really want just like a calm life, and
Yeah.
and like it doesn't sit well with me when that's like, I guess, a dynamic that's in my life.
Especially like the gay scene, it's very different in a sense. In a way, it's more so on that wave of like, yeah, we'll figure it out. If we get married, we do. If we don't, we don't. So like I've kind of like found a hard time trying to navigate that, because like I'm not part of the world like that, but I am, just for being like my orientation and stuff. So I think if we can jump to a different topic, I saw that you have your own Airbnb now, which is fun. How's that going?
It's really cool. I love it. It
Yeah.
takes that hosting aspect of,
And having your own space and just doing your thing.
yeah, I mean, it's like that cliche. You can be working towards something for 5 years, and overnight, it just, your world changes and it all comes to fruition. I'm sure there's a better quote for that, but that's kind of how it was. When I moved, I was living through short-term rentals because I didn't know where I was going to end up, how long I was going to be in a place. So I really experienced how different places were managed and came together. And I really I wouldn't say the space was always meant to be this full time. I was in a long distance relationship, so it was always really irritating for me that I would leave for so long and not just be able to put my place up for someone to use. Or I traveled a lot even for work. I wanted even that more of a digital nomad type of lifestyle where it's like, yeah, if it wasn't for my place and having to basically be paying rent two places, I would work remotely more often. So
On
there
the
was
beach.
a lot. Yeah, there was just like a lot where I think my lifestyle really wanted something like that where I had the flexibility to be in and out of it as I needed to be. But at the same time, my life changed overnight, and I found the perfect place, and did some renos, and it made more sense to just stay where I'm at in my place and have that just as its own business. There was a lot of attention put into it to make it a space where if someone were to move there tomorrow, they had everything that they needed, and they were comfortable, and they didn't need to go out and get all these different things. There's a lot of Airbnbs that have very little to offer when you're there. You don't even have a plastic fork, so
Yeah.
there was a lot of attention put into that, of like making it very homey.
It's your hospitality, it's your background.
Totally. It's like my calling. If I could, I would have more of them if I could, but
You'll get there.
it's a perfect example of like when you're on this constant treadmill of like, I need to do this and saving for this, I gotta do that, like, right? You're just like so laser focused on this journey and this vision and your goal, and then what happens when you get it, right? Like, what next? And it's so like everyone starts to ask like, what's your New Year's resolution? What's your goal this year? And it's like, I just crushed a bunch of goals. Like I just want a minute to just take in everything
I
and
want my
just,
list to be empty.
it's not about a list being empty. It's the appreciation that comes with like, I've accomplished this and I just want to enjoy it. Like I just want to enjoy the fruits of my labor a little bit, right? So that's where, again, it comes back to entrepreneurship. Like it's so constant where it's like, okay, now I've done all these things. So what's next? It's like, there will be a next. The next will come through at some point. I'm not gonna just throw my life away and just like forget how to, you know, do things and set more goals for myself. It's just, it's not the time right now. The time is just to appreciate, ground, like get used to this new change and this new, you know, project, right? Because there's a lot that obviously comes with that. It's with anything, it's not just like a snap of a finger and it's perfect. There's a journey that comes with that. There was a lot that came with it. So
going back to what you said about like, you know, enjoying your fruits of your labor and stuff, when you find that you've gone through all the lists and things that you've done, how do you manage like stagnation? Because I think sometimes you can get to a peak and then you're good and then you're enjoying what you have and stuff. When do you know when to take the next step? Is it something that you're like, you think of and you want to try, or, you know, at the point of all your businesses like being established, is it kind of just like, okay, if something happens or changes, that's when you make that change?
I don't think it's like a timing thing. I think it's an intuition and opportunity that comes around, right? I mean, there's, you know, my team's bigger now than it was a few years ago. My roles shifted where I'm not, like, I'm still doing, right? I still jump in as I need to, right? It's still my business, my responsibility. And as much as that responsibility has been shifted to other people, sometimes they also need help. And sometimes I do need to still do, you know, smaller things that just need to be done to get everything where it needs to be, right? So I get what you're saying of like, what point do you like get up, move on from it? But
not even get up and move on from it, just like, okay, when's like you said, you don't plan like what's the next level? Is there a next level? Or is this like the peak of what I'm doing? Like, you know, I think the mental challenges with that.
Yeah, I don't know. Like again, I think I'd be really satisfied if this was it for me. Okay. And at the same time, if it's not, I do trust that like I'll realize that and make a different decision and move forward with it. But I think, again, people put a lot of pressure on themselves to have the next thing sorted and do that, right? And it's obviously important depending on what your goal is, right?
Yeah.
But
I think you just said it too. I have a satisfaction right now. I think just coming to the place of like having some sort of satisfaction with anything in general with your business or whatever you're working on, I think just having that would be a good stepping stone to be like, okay, where do I go from here? Do I stay here? You know,
we're even at a time with the business where it's like we're going through a whole other website restructure. We're not reinventing the wheel. We're just cleaning it up and giving it a facelift, because when we did the website the last time, we planted a lot of seeds. There were a lot of things that we knew we could do and we needed clients to give us a chance on, and there was stuff that we were already doing and the seeds were planted, and now we're seeing what's bloomed and how it's all come together, right? So it's more how we're packaging it together for clients. But again, that's a natural next step for the business, for us. And just like, what's our niche? How do we see the business growing? Do I want a massive agency where there's tens of, like hundreds, like who knows how many
Trillions.
people working for me? And I don't even want to say it because I don't know that that's going to be the answer all the time. But right now we're really comfortable with the growth that we've had, what we're providing to clients and how we're doing that. So part of that is like the intimacy that we have with our clients and how close we are with them. There's companies that we work for that people think we're just internal teams for them, right? I think that's really important for us to keep in our essence, and that might mean we stay very boutique, or it could also mean that we meet a lot of great people that can keep joining the team, that can replicate that vision and be part of it. Our first step really now is, you know, all of our business has been word of mouth so far. We've been invited to pitch and we either get it or we don't, but like we've not ever gone out and said, we think we can help you, and worked on that. So at this point, that's doing a disservice for us as a business as well as for potential clients of how we work with people and what we offer. If people that we're working with have found us to be a valuable resource for them, then there's many more who would really need to hear about how we do things and what we do.
How many people do you have on your team?
There's 5 of us, but we work with a lot of different partner agencies and contractors, freelancers.
How did you meet the people on your team? Like, was it through mutuals, or was it like you put a job posting out there? What was the process?
We all work together in like our past lives. It's so funny where we were working. I feel like we're all very culturally the same. And we understand each other, and we understand each other's tendencies, I think is the best way to explain it. So anyone who's very like driven and motivated on their own and wants more, right? Like that seems to be just a personality that we attract and that we've worked with and have grown with. And I think you can't teach those things. Like you can teach someone a task, right? But you can't teach work ethic, and you can't
teach natural connection,
motivation almost, right? Like,
yeah.
So I think, you know, people who have come and gone as well, like they have their different boundary with it.
Aside from like your people that you work with, how has it been, or I don't even know if you experienced it, how's it been working with, you know, family and friends that ask you for your services, and like what are the challenges and pros and cons to that for you?
I really love it because there's a comfort that you get with that. Like when it comes to clients asking us for services, it's who are friends. It's like I love being able to do that for them and give that to them. And I also don't have a problem discounting. Like, you know, that's not, some people are so like, no, absolutely not. But that's something I want to give to them, right? And same thing with work, right? We understand each other, so it's like there's no beating behind the bush. It's just you say what it is. We don't need to write this like long passive aggressive email to each other. It's just calling it what it is and like how are we moving forward. So I do appreciate the comfort that comes with those relationships, but at the same time, like what boundary do you have with any of it, and are you being taken advantage of? And honestly, I'm really lucky with, you know, the people in my life with that, where it's not a case, but I could definitely see how if you're not really connected to that, how that can spiral.
I've had an interesting run with that, because even with what you said about like having your glass or like filling up other people's glasses, I was asking that because I wasn't sure what you've experienced with that aspect of it, being like, oh, I want to help you, I want to do this and that, I'm going to give you that discount, and then let's just say they have their own business or they have something else where they could do the same thing, but they haven't given you that same thing back. I don't know if you experienced that, and how would you look at that in the future, being like, okay, well,
you can't be doing things like with the expectation that someone's gonna do it back, right? It's the same thing with work. It's the same thing with love. It's like if you're doing something to get something out of it in return, then it's also not genuine. And I can't say that like in all the cases. There are times where it's like you give everything and then you don't feel like you're getting reciprocated that. I've also been there, but that's not what they mean to do. Like they're not doing that to you. It comes back to the other person's boundaries, priorities. And I think if you're doing things out of your want to help, then it should just be given without expectation of anything coming in return. Then it's up to you. Okay, I don't expect anything. Maybe in this situation I would have done something different, but you know, is that worth you communicating to the other person? Like someone also might not even realize what you're seeing and what your perspective is. Is it not worth the communication? Is it just disrespectful and rude and you know, negative? Then is that that shows true colors of a person at the end of the day? So I think that person's character and like their intent behind it is also
I think what you just said about like, you know, figuring out what it is, I think it's interesting, because sometimes when you go through something like that, like you can like not take it personally, but just like run it through a business lens where you have to still do A, B, C, D to like just end whatever it's going on. And then sometimes maybe the person that you're dealing with is very hot-headed or just very rude, and they'll still say whatever they want to other people and like put a damper on your business, so like, is it kind of just like, this is for my business, let me just do this and that's it, kind of just like shutting off whatever emotion you have and just thinking straight logic?
No, because I think, like, again, your head and your heart in that middle ground, it's kind of, someone told me something called the wise man theory, and when we're even doing presentations, I bring it up. There's a logical side and there's an emotional side. And those are two opposite ends of the spectrum. And really, when you come to the middle, that's where the wise man premise comes in. It's when your logical side and your emotional side have met in the middle, right? So if you're thinking too emotionally of the feeling that came out of that outcome, you're not making a proper decision. And then if you're thinking too logical of like, well, 1 + 1 is 2, then you're always gonna equate that behavior to something, and then that's also kind of an issue, right? So that's where blending the two worlds, I think brings that truth out of, okay, this is what happened, this is what I gave, I didn't feel like I received enough, whatever it is, right? Like, we're talking super broad and not at all with an example, so obviously it'll shift, but does that person have a lot on their plate? What did they need you for? Is it to help them? Okay, yeah. Okay, what do they need help with? What did I expect? Did I not get what I expected? Did I communicate my expectations? Yes, no, right? All of these factors kind of matter to why you get there. And part of relationships and having long-term friendships, long-term clients, long-term relationships of any regard is, are you able to come together and find this mutual ground? And you're gonna do something that's gonna piss them off one day, and they're gonna piss you off one day. And is that their personality? I don't want to say, like, again, we're all very unique. So something that might upset you isn't gonna upset the next person. So that's where being very in tune with your own values, I think, is very important, because it will start to remove people in your life and allow more people to come in that can relate and you can build off of. And the reality is, sometimes I look at some friendships I've had where it's like, there's times we have not been on the same page because we were in two totally different places in our lives, and we weren't understanding each other, and we didn't get each other because our lifestyles were so different, and our thought process and our action, like, it's just, we weren't like. But how do you come together? How do you talk through things and find,
or is there even coming together?
There might not be, right?
Yeah.
Some things come to an end. But again, I think when you're really engraved and grounded in your own values, that's where you also, that's not a loss anymore. That's just, you're making room for someone better, something better, right?
Yeah.
And it doesn't need to be so disposable. Sometimes, like, I see it happen where it's like, are you in or are you out? 0 to 100. Like, maybe it doesn't need to be like that. Maybe we can be cool and see each other, like, in a group setting or once a year or whatever it is, right?
I think I'm still learning that, because it's like, I understand what you're saying to like a T. I still find myself making the decision of being either 0 or 100, and it's like, I dig at my brain a little bit, because I'm just like, what's again, it's going back to like trying to figure out what's happening, and like not having that intuition or that wise man thinking is what you were saying, like meeting in the middle, because it's like you're trying to like savor yourself up and not hurt yourself in ways, but also just trying to make a good decision, and I find myself getting lost between the two.
And sometimes, you could be sabotaging yourself too, of like feeling like something's so one-sided, but that feeling is your experience. Your experience is coming from past experiences, your own kind of mind and mood and your own sounding board, right? So it's coming from somewhere, but like, is it something that you're trying to let go of yourself and it's holding you back from kind of releasing that, like whatever trigger, trauma, or just even like upbringing, anything, right? There's so many factors that go into our subconscious and why we react to things. But that's where I think, again, just being really centered with yourself and who you are will naturally do that one day. Maybe not tomorrow or the next day.
I think with everything we talked about with like grounding and like knowing who you are really just goes into the whole field of like spirituality. So like what's your learning process or understanding of spirituality at this point?
I do think everything happens for a reason.
Has your family like is your family part of like any religion or stuff?
We're Catholic. Some people in our family are more religious than others. It's not like it was always like we're all going to church and we're all like, you know, there are members of my family who just aren't into it. And it's never been like judged, right? I do find like I've gotten more religious and more into prayer, and I do find that that's helped me be more mindful and more focused on now. So it's actually kind of brought me that peace. And I think with anything, right, you also have to make your own mind of something, and you like, not be brainwashed or led to think something that doesn't feel right from you. But I do find a lot of the teachings that have come from the Catholic religion, not just the Catholic religion, because I've also been open to hearing other religions, right? If you look at the core of a lot of them, there's a lot of synergies between them all. And you can say, oh, the Bible's old school, but like it actually does have the teachings for everyday stuff that we deal with just in a broader place. And I think the biggest lesson is like let go and let be and like trust and have faith. And I do really believe there's a bigger plan, like more than we ever can understand. And I do think that's helped me kind of center myself and not be living by anxious thoughts that can take over. It does allow me to be more centered, like really trust my intuition more. Because when you have that intuitive kind of cycle happen, you're also trusting something that it's not black and white, it's not written, but something's driving you to go there. What's the drive, right? So that's what it's done for me. I do find that it's allowed me to be more present.
Was there any moment, I know like it was, you know, your day-to-day stuff, you kind of need to find balance in meditation. Was there any specific moment where you started diving into the concepts and kind of be like, no, there's something here, there's something that's I need to be aware of?
I mean, I think, you know, it just got to a point where the weight of the world was on me. There was so many obstacles and challenges and so much negativity around me, and the weight of the world was on me. And, you know, it's like
you needed something outside yourself.
It wasn't even that black and white. Like it's that total like spiritual awakening. Like you see the light and it just something clicks. Like that is the best way I can express, I guess, that shift. I do think there's truth to like the more positive you immerse yourself with, the more positive things will happen. And when there's so much negativity, it's really hard not to see the bad and the gray skies and everything that kind of comes with that. So I do think overthinking can result in like not being here in the moment, which is where you're meant to be. So I think when your ego really gets triggered and is involved of why aren't I here yet? Why don't I have this, that this should have happened? Like that's your ego kind of taking away from your now, and your now should be really focused on like
now
today. And if you're like really trying to like move forward and deal with change and adapt, your now will be centered on the foundation of what you need to get you there. But it's in perfect timing.
If we go back to what you said about just like finding the light, can you like break that down a little bit, what you actually mean by like seeing the light? Because I know everyone has their different experiences. When you say see the light, like what is there any specifics you can add to that about what you meant?
I don't know. It's really hard to pinpoint what and where. It really was a mindset shift of so much, like when they say it rains, it pours, right? But what happens when the rain doesn't stop? And then that's what I was dealing with. And it just was very bogged down, and it disrupted my energy, and it affected the way I made decisions, and the negativity that was around me and the challenges that were around me really took over me. I can't really pinpoint a moment in time. It was a click, but it wasn't this click that came like instantaneous. Like, I think the only other option was to find the silver lining and kind of fight through it, right? And with that, I did find the centering to be a lot of the base, which was love and have faith and just trust that this is happening for a reason and that you wouldn't be given anything that you couldn't handle. And now that I look back at those challenges, I think it really developed my character, and I really do find like I'm calmer, I'm more appreciative. It's not that I still deal with problems. I think it's just how I deal with the problem that's really shifted.
Okay.
And I think it's just all, like, it's really hard to pinpoint.
I think why I asked you that was because I do get in the mindsets like that, like yourself, and I found myself looking externally for what's around me. Like my I would say my spiritual awakening, like I started like seeing numbers, let's just say, and then I started feeling energies around me. That was like my spiritual awakening. And then I started going to an astrologer. I did my Reiki, and it was just like, I remember telling myself all the time, because I'd be so confused about situations, and like I went with the flow all the time, yes, but like I just got to a point where like I just want to know the truth. Like, what's going on? Like, what is it? Like, this makes no sense to me. You know what I mean? You know, when things are like, you know, you see things for what they are, and everyone around you like cool with it, and they move on, and I just couldn't move on from certain things. So I'm just like, what's going on here? There's like, I felt like there was a truth behind it. So when I started going to, you know, my astrologer, the Reiki, it was very eye-opening and very wholesome to be like, oh, okay, like, I'm not crazy. There's something here. I feel there's something, there's just something there that's just like I'm aware of, but my brain couldn't figure out what the awareness was, you know? So like even what you said about like just going back and, you know, reminding myself, oh, like patience, peace, like go with the flow stuff. Like I get lost in that sometimes, and then like I'll get my numbers thrown at me randomly. Like right now I always see 222 all the time. And like I read a lot of number books, and they talk about like, oh, well, actually my astrologer told me, she said 222s are more so you need to be receptive to outcomes. And like, what is that? Go with the flow. So like, you know what I mean? That's my little nuanced way of taking what you go through and how I go through it. But like, that's what my experience has been, and it's been very overwhelming, but like fulfilling at the same
So
time.
what happens,
you know?
when you don't see 222?
I think when I get signs like that, it's when I really need it. You know, if I don't get the signs, then I'm vibrating at a level where it's like, yeah, you're confused, but you're fine. If I'm seeing 2-2, it's kind of just like the universe being like a reminder, like, hey, you're good, chill. But this is the thing too, there's different versions of that. So like, if you see 222 and you're going to buy something, you know, it's all about reciprocation. When you want to buy something, you want it to work for you, not work for it. So you wouldn't want to buy something that's, if you're like, let's just say you're going for a car and then the license plate says 222 on it, or whatever the pricing, like you would want to stay away from that. Because like, if you buy a car, you want it to work for you. You don't, it's not a relationship where you have to meet in the middle. You know what I mean? So like, stuff like that is cool. So it reminds me like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I
That makes
definitely
sense.
like, I do believe like things happen for a reason. Signs come when they need to come. I don't know what I read, and it was like really interesting to read as well, was if you're constantly looking for your answer in, let's say, numbers as an example, then you're still looking for the validation that your ego is looking to still serve. So like, how do you find that internal compass and that own peace without seeing those signs? Like, if you really need to see this and you weren't getting it, now are you losing hope, or is there something you can tap into to
I know.
validate yourself? Because that's really what you need to be doing.
I think the more you get into nuances like that, you learn a lot about the knowledge of it and like the meanings of it. So it's like growing up, like you learn things that you know right from wrong, this and that. So it's kind of like, yes, you get more knowledge on the concepts of all of that. So like, when you are looking for that, I'll get signs that are literally telling me you need to relax, like calm down. You know what I mean? So like, yes, I'll get reminders like, hey, like, you know, do this or don't do this. even then it's a challenge because you're just trying to like trust that like you're receiving the right sign for the right reasons and not like getting off on a tangent and going crazy. But sometimes, you know, everything happens for a reason, so you have to go through that. So sometimes I'll receive a sign and then it's the right thing that I'm thinking, but I still had to go through what I had to go through, you know. So it's not like, I say it all the time. I go to my astrologer. It's not like I'm going there and she's giving me all the fluff. You know, you're gonna find love. You're gonna get $1 million house. Like, of course I want all these things, but I literally go there all the time. She says good things, and then she tells me all the shit things. And majority of the time, it's all the shit things. And then I don't get discouraged, but I do reflect on it. I'm just like, oh my god, like why do I keep going to her, this and that? But it's kind of just like I need to learn. Like I need to wake up. You know, and my understanding, and I've been sharing this a lot, like I believe in past lives. So like when you have a past life, like me and you have met in a past life before. That's why we know each other. Any interactions you have with people are from your past life. So in your past life you grow to be a certain way, and then in this life it gets flipped around to the other side, so you have to learn the opposite. So that's what I'm struggling with right now. I'm in the process of understanding past life experiences and then trying to, because like I'm 27 now, like from then to now, like I've grown into this version of Daniel, but the Daniel that needs to be still needs to evolve. It still needs to be different. But in order for me to get there, I had to go through this version of myself. So here I am. I've learned different things, but now I'm just like, I learned so much, but I still have yet more to learn and unlearn. The hardest part is unlearning, because like what you talked about with friends, like just learning, like, you know, people do their own thing, like you have to learn to just step back and stuff. Like that's not me. I'm the guy that's jumping in, like I'm Dan, like I'm your mother, so to speak. Like I want to have that mother figure instinct for everybody, you know. And that's not a bad trait. It's just like getting that energy, taking it and putting it towards different things.
Yes.
And that's the hard part, because it's just like I want to put it towards A, B, C, and D. And it's like the universe is like, no, you have to put it towards Z, X, Y. Like, you know what I mean? It's just...
It could still be A, B, C, D. It could just be like a different color A or a different size B, or like...
Well, I learned that. But again, it's just like you can still put it to the A, B, and C. It's just like, again, going back to the expectation of what you're going to get out of it, which then makes me naturally just go to the next ones, because that's just who I am, you know. So I can still be that for people, but it's kind of just like, again, filling the cup in and out, being like, okay, like this is actually not filling me up. It fills me up to a certain extent, but like to the point where I have to exasperate myself in doing it, it's like, no, you know. And that's been the challenge. But it's, yeah, I truly believe in that, and it's been so helpful, and it's so crazy because again, it's just like little concepts here and there that just we're not taught about, and we're not, like, it's just not talked about, you know. And like even going back to the religion part, like there is a lot of things, truth in the Bibles and the Quran, you know what I mean, the Muslim one. There's so many truths, but it's just like they give you hope. But if you do A, B, C, and D this way, then you'll get that, you know. And like that's not what spirituality is. And like your experience that you just explaining your whole life, what you went through, is just a manifestation of that, being like, no, like it's not so black and white. It's not by the book, you know. It is in some ways, but like you have to take what you have from the book and make it your own in some sort of way without diluting the truth, which is hard, finding your own truth.
Yeah, and I think I don't know that I completely connected to everything like years ago, right? I didn't understand a lot of it, and maybe it was like the only thing I had to kind of grasp. But, you know, if there's anything I can leave like with it, it's, you know, if you're asking for patience, you're going to be given situations that build the character to have patience. So when you're on that journey, it could feel like my prayers aren't answered, or like, what am I like thinking? Like, you know what I mean? Like, why is this not coming through? Why am I not getting what I manifested? Why, like all those things that kind of come through, but you're on the journey, right? And that's where, when you're super grounded, when you're like really following your own intuition, and you're not like just doing something because you're listening to someone or because you have to, that's like where it all really comes, I think, to fruition, and where you can start seeing things from that lens.
I think what you just said about asking for what you want and then getting it is totally correct. And the the only thing I think about when it comes down to asking for stuff is like there's literally just one thing you need to ask all the time with any situation. It's just like, give me the wisdom. Don't give me anything else, just give me the wisdom, because if you don't have the wisdom of trying to figure out a situation, you get tossed up in it. If you don't have the wisdom to figure out, oh, I got all this money, what do I do with it? Or I have zero money, what do I do? Like, just constantly ask for wisdom, because I think that's the most important trait to have, especially when you're trying to navigate yourself and the world around you. And it's life at the end of the day. Well, this was great. Before you go, you want to share any of your Instagram tags or your company's website and stuff that you want to share with whoever's watching?
Yeah, I mean, my name, first and last name, Nadeen Borg. You can find anything through LinkedIn or Instagram that way, or the Airbnb. Everything's pretty searchable when you go there. But WY Consulting Group, wy-cg.com is the website. That'll be the hub for everything of what we're doing, and direct you to socials and everything like that. So thank you for having me.